When I was editing out my last video, I couldn't help but notice that that little pin had a lot of burrs on it. Now that's a lot better. Well, I'm now at the place where I can start sanding. Now, I've done such a good job at matching the back to the sides. There's absolutely no gaps. And I'm afraid that if I take the back off and sand it, it could be that I might accidentally sand a little bit too much on the edges, and then it's not going to mesh up really nice with the sides here the way it is right now. Right now it's pretty well perfect, and I want to keep it that way. So I think I'm just going to leave everything together, and I'll just carefully sand the inside with the orbital sander, and we'll see how it goes. Now this little thing that I made is really slick. Holes are perfectly lined up. Now for the outside, I will just start off at 120 grit, work my way up to 400. But for the inside, the final drum on this sander was 220. So I'll start off at about 320 on the inside and then 400. You know, I wish you could see how that feels. Silky smooth. Now because the door is so very fragile, I'm going to do almost all of it by hand, and less chance of breaking these joints. And these are sanding discs that I peeled off of the orbital sander, and I may as well see if I can get a little bit more life out of them here. I have the door frame and also the case sanded down pretty much to the point where I can apply the stain. And before I do that, I usually put hinges on. And this is one little job I don't like to do. And the reason being is because I find it really hard to get the holes lined up just in exactly the right place. Well, I think that's pretty well got it. Now I just hope I made those holes deep enough. Well, I think I did a pretty good job at getting those holes in the right place. Now there's something I never do anymore, and that's use the drill to do the final tightening. I always do that by hand. That way there's not too much danger of stripping the threads out. Now here's a problem that I always have when I'm trying to mount the door on the hinges. And that is, how do I know where to put the holes on this door? There's a little trick that I discovered about 25 years ago. I made these about 25 years ago. All they are is just little tiny screws that have been cut short and sort of brought to a point. I'll show you how they work. So now what I do is I center this screw up with the hole. I'll do the same on the other hinge, and then I'll show you how this works. It actually works really well. Okay, the points now are lined up pretty much with the center of the hole in the hinge. Now, I said it works really well. It usually works really well. I suppose now because I'm videoing this, it's not gonna. And the next thing I do is I line the door up so that it's perfectly aligned with the case. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tap over top of where the hinges are, and it'll make little indentations in the wood. And I have to be careful not to tap too hard because I will break these joints if I do. Okay, now hopefully all 4 points are going to show up. Let's see what we got here. Now there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not bad. I've done better, but I've also done worse. Now for a door latch, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a friction fit latch, and I'll just put a pin in the door here, drill a hole in the case, and then have it so that it just sort of is slightly out of line, and when you push it shut, it stays shut. I think that should work. Okay, I've drilled a little hole here just slightly smaller than this pin, and I'm very careful here. I should be able to just push it home. There we go. Now once again, I'll use the pin to mark the case, and I'll know approximately where to drill the hole. I might drill it just slightly inside of where it's going to make the mark. Yep, I can see that. Okay, that's just 1 size under 1/8 of an inch. So I'll make the hole 1/8 of an inch because the hole has to be a little bigger. Well, I think if I make the hole just 1 size bigger and curve the nail, it'll be perfect. Well, I think with a little adjusting, that's going to be okay. Now you should recall from an earlier video that I had concluded that the bottom of this had to be lifted up just a little bit for the dial to be straight, and that this little piece of scrap was about the right thickness. Well, as it turns out, so is this. And this is probably going to work out better because it doesn't have any varathane on it. The glue will stick a lot better to this. And I have to do this before I do the staining, so I guess I better do that right now. Okay, and now just allow for the width of the blade. So now my thinking is that this flat piece here will hold the bottom of the movement out, and then if I have something like this on each side, every time the movement is taken out, battery put in, and then it's put back down, it will go in exactly the same place. And that's the plan anyway. Well, you know, once I get that glued into place, get the dial back on, and then maybe I'll make a couple of little brackets on the back so that the movement won't twist on the dial. You'll see what I'm talking about in the next video. Also in the next video, be putting on the stain. And I've got this tin left over from projects that I've done for probably well over 20 years. And I think there's about this much left in there from the feel of it. So I'm hoping there'll be enough. Anyway, I hope you'll watch for number 15.